Conversations, episode 9. If you are a returning listener, welcome back. Great to have you back with us. And if you are a first-time listener, welcome. Great to have you here, and hopefully you'll be coming back in the future as well. Whether you're a new listener or a long-time listener, make sure that you like, subscribe, interact with the various socials and the platforms that we have via commenting or interacting with other listeners. We're on all the major podcast platforms: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio. But if there is one that you prefer to listen to that we're not on so far, give us a shout and let us know, and we'll make sure to get that up there so that you can continue to listen via your preference. Lots of different ways to reach us, of course, commenting on those various platforms, as well as our socials. We've got a Facebook page, X at KBEX_ATC, Instagram at cornversationspod, and of course, the email, cornversationspod@gmail.com, where you can reach out to us, send a mailbag question, let us know what you like, what you don't like, or just give us some flowers if you really like the show. We really appreciate the interaction, and that's really what is going to continue to help this show grow. So get out there, give us a like, give us a subscribe. We really appreciate it. If you haven't seen it yet, if you're new or if you just missed it, if you're a returning listener, had a post up this week on the socials related to merch. Did a first batch of some stuff that was pretty happy with. Go take a look at that. Let us know what you like, what you don't like. If there's enough interest, we might be able to put together a first batch of merch for listeners as well. It was pretty cost effective, so it shouldn't break the bank by any means, but we'd love to understand what you like and what you don't like before we go forward with that any further. Jumping right into things, though, the sports world gave us a couple of big topics that are worth talking about in more detail today. One of them you'd probably have to be living under a rock as a sports fan not to know about, and the other one, maybe not. That one could have slipped under the radar for you depending on how big of a college basketball fan you are. So we'll hit those two topics. They're heavy. They're somewhat polarizing, so I think that there's going to be a lot of opinions on the two topics today. Go ahead and leave a comment for us. Let us know what you think about these, because we may have different thoughts. And then we'll, of course, hit the mailbag as well. We'll lighten things up a little bit with that. The mailbag question is a little bit lighter-hearted, so we'll end on a lighter note. But without any further ado, let's just jump right into the first topic that I wanted to discuss today, and that is the one that you have to be under a rock to not hear about. Of course, that's the NBA betting saga that is playing out before our eyes this week. If you are under one of those rocks and you don't know what we're talking about, the NBA this week had a couple of different betting-related scandals that surfaced and became breaking news. One of them is pretty wild. It's something that you would probably expect to be out of a movie, and that's something that was related to NBA betting. Well, not NBA betting, but NBA players, former NBA players, high-stakes poker, and the mafia. And that sounds really juicy, but quite frankly, I'm not going to touch that one all that much, because that one is less to do with sports, in my opinion, less to do with how important it is that sports leagues handle the situation with kid gloves, and more just about how odd it is that the mafia and some former NBA players are involved. So I won't touch that one, but the other one I will touch, and we'll talk a little bit about, because that one absolutely is important when it comes to the future of how professional sports leagues handle gambling, which is here to stay. It's not going away. The solution is not just to ban things, but they have to hit this topic head on, and they have to treat it with the utmost importance, because it really is. It is one of the most important things that sports leagues are dealing with today, based on the general legality of sports betting across the country. So to give a little bit of a breakdown here, what we had happen, or what came to the forefront this week, is another situation of current NBA players or those associated with the NBA. One of them was an associate head coach on an NBA team, providing previously non-released information that affected betting lines. Terry Rozier, Damon Jones, both guys associated with the NBA, they had information that was not public that they decided to leak to friends or people that they actually sold the information to, who were then going to go use that information to place wagers on events associated with games that these individuals were involved in. And obviously, that one is something that's a big no-no. You cannot give any grace to these guys. They knew exactly what they were doing. It's unreleased information. You're giving it to people that are going to use that information to their benefit. It's cut and dry. They're going to face the full extent of the penalties that they've committed, and I don't expect that it's going to end well for either of these guys, given the severity of these issues, which they're federal crimes. So they're really important. It's something that now they've got a lot on their own plates. But what I think is more important is how this affects all of the professional sports leagues. Because, again, gambling is here to stay. It's not going away. The cap is off the bottle with regards to legalized sports betting, and you can't put that cap back on the bottle. So I was thinking earlier this week about what is the solution here? What do we do to solve this problem, if we're a professional sports league? And I think it's a little bit more complicated than that. I don't think that there is necessarily a singular solution to this problem, because, again, you cannot put a cap back on a bottle like this. It is there. It is part of the fabric of the sports ecosystem at this point. But it is the tip of the iceberg. This is bringing up a lot of the issues that reside underneath, that people who were originally opposed to legalized sports betting were essentially referring to, and they said, hey, this is a big problem. We have a lot of complications here that are going to come with this. Let's maybe think twice about just opening things up. But of course, money talks. This is a huge business at this point. It's a huge business for the sports leagues. I mean, you're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars of additional revenue that are coming into these professional sports leagues related to the revenue that they're making from legalized sports betting. So there was always the business case there for that to happen, and it was a foregone conclusion that eventually it was going to become legalized. But it is imperative that all of these professional sports leagues and the NCAA for collegiate athletics keeps in mind the most important thing when it comes to sports and watching sports, and why people will invest so much of their time and money into these activities. It is the integrity of the results on the playing surface. And when you have situations like this that come up, where people are feeding information to others and placing bets based on things that they know that wasn't previously public knowledge, you are towing a very dangerous line, which is that how far can it go? Are guys going to start to throw games? Are guys going to start to affect results to the extent that the perception from the viewer is that the integrity of the results is no longer there. And if that were to happen, and I'm not saying that it is happening at this point, I don't think it is, but if it were to happen, it's the end of sports as we know it. It really is. The whole reason that sports is at a different rung on the ladder than something like professional wrestling or reality television is that there is a belief that the results that you are seeing on whatever playing surface it is are legitimate and are not affected by outside forces. And when the perception changes to one of, it actually could be affected by outside forces, or there are nefarious things going on where I no longer trust that this is just two teams playing each other, both trying to win, and we don't know what the outcome is going to be. We, or anyone, knows what the outcome is going to be. Then it all falls apart. And I think that's the most dangerous thing that we're looking at here, is that this is the tip. This is the situation where we say, well, yeah, these guys know some people who are putting some money on things, but in reality, Terry Rozier was hurt and knew he was going to be out, and he was just sharing information that was going to happen anyway. Okay, that's this situation. That's the tip of the iceberg that we can see, but everything underneath it is all the stuff that we know can happen that is far more dangerous than that. And that's what these sports leagues have to keep in front of them. I think the solution, if you want to call it this, is making sure that the integrity of the results on the playing field are what they defend with everything that they have. I think the writing is already on the wall based on what we've seen in similar situations with guys getting involved in illegal activities related to sports betting, that these guys are as good as gone. They need to be banned from their leagues, a permanent ban, never allowed to return. But really what that's doing is it's just serving as a warning to everybody else. It is not worth it to get involved in this. It is not worth it to take a chance. You will be caught. The penalties will be steep. You have to have that out there for these guys so that some of these things that are underneath the water that we really don't want to talk about won't come to the surface, won't become something that's above the water. It's so hard to stop information from being leaked, right? I mean, some of these guys are telling people that are just friends. Or what if you have a situation, I heard this the other day, where you've got a guy in a professional league and he's got friends who are in college. And these friends who are in college are not part of the professional league, so they have no bound to not use the information they're told from a friend to their advantage. It's a really slippery slope that we run down here when these guys don't think that it's a big deal, or they think they can get away with it. So the penalty has to be harsh. These guys need to be gone. I would go as far as to say that if you're an athlete in a sport that can be legally bet on by the general public, that you should not be allowed to bet on anything. So let's say, for example, you're a college basketball player. You should not be able to bet on professional football, because who's to say you don't have a friend who's now in the NFL, and that information can be disseminated to you, can be passed down to you, just in a normal conversation between friends, and that you can use that information to your benefit. It changes lines. People start to question the integrity of what's going on in the field. That is the most important thing. I'd like to see these leagues take steps to ensure that that's happening. I think if you're talking about a PR situation, what you want to communicate to the public, that's what you want to communicate to the public, is that the integrity of the results are not affected. We are cracking down on this hard. So we'll see what ends up happening here. This is not going away. This is probably, unfortunately, not the last time we're going to hear of a situation where professional athletes are involved in this kind of activity. But every single time it happens, the same penalty needs to be passed down. You're gone. And I think, generally speaking, the leagues have done a good job about that, but they need to keep the foot on the pedal. So, in college basketball news, there has been some activity this week that is bringing to light a very interesting situation that seems to be causing some uproar within the college basketball community. And this isn't necessarily new news. In fact, in September, we learned of the first situation related to this topic that was going to occur, and it kind of went under the radar. But now there's been a couple other cases that have come out this week, and that's where some of the chatter has begun, because it's now not a singular situation, but a little bit of a trend. And I do think it's a trend, because I don't think that this is going to stop anytime soon, and I think the floodgates are open now. And what I'm talking about is a situation where former G League players — G League is, of course, the minor leagues to the NBA. It is a professional league. It is a league that high school or overseas players have historically been able to opt to join, as opposed to going the college route prior to their aspirations for making an NBA roster. And we're now seeing a few examples of former G League players, so guys who have had experience playing in the G League over the past couple or few seasons, opting to come back to the college game and play for Division I programs. In September, it was announced that Thierry Darlin, a guard that was in the G League for a couple of years, would be joining Santa Clara's program, and he'll be a member of that team. And he's been given 2 years of remaining eligibility at the college level. That, of course, was almost a month ago. So, again, it's something that's kind of slipped under the radar, at least at first. But the reason that this is starting to become a topic that people are paying attention to is that 2 more situations have occurred in more recent time frame. So now you've got Egyptian center Abdullah Ahmed, who also spent the last 2 seasons playing in the G League, who is announcing his intention to play college basketball, and he's listed a number of schools that he's considering joining, the likes of BYU, Louisville, Auburn, Houston, UCLA, and Mississippi State. And earlier this week, a third player, London Johnson, who spent the past 3 seasons in the G League, announced his commitment to Louisville. So Louisville is actually taking this pretty well and is working on not only their first player that they've signed, but are working on another one that has played in the G League and has professional experience. And generally the overriding sentiment that I've seen about this is that this is a bad thing for college basketball, that this is a step back for the game at this level, and that there is no place for players who have made the decision, the conscious decision, to go the route of minor league professional basketball in the United States as opposed to the collegiate game. And once they've made that decision, the thought is that's done. There's no going back. But in fact now, thanks to NIL, the NCAA's general loosey-goosiness with regards to rulings like this, it is not a no-going-back situation, but in fact something that you can decide to revert on later if it doesn't seem to be working out in your favor. And working out in your favor is something that maybe you can take a couple of different viewpoints on. On one hand, you can say, okay, these guys were not able to make it to the league And so that's why they're going back to college, because they weren't good enough to make it. And so now they want to take advantage of the college situation. Well, my thought to that is, of course they do. There's more money in the college game now. They can get paid. The competition may not necessarily be what it is elsewhere, but it's pretty close. And frankly speaking, if you've decided or you have been effectively told you're not going to make it to the league anyway, then why not capitalize on your talents somewhere where you can make the money, which at this point is the American collegiate system. I personally have no problem with this, and I actually think it might be good for college basketball to have some of these players who, generally speaking, were highly regarded coming out of high school, or if they rose through the ranks somewhere else, a foreign player, they would be considered highly recruitable athletes to the college game, but decided to go the G League route. I think it's good for college basketball that some of these guys are going to come back and the college game will get to benefit from their play. I really don't see why a situation where these guys have made a decision, tried the leap didn't work, but they have the ability to play at a high level in the college game is a bad thing for the college game. I think you could make an argument that it's a bad thing for the fringe player who may not get a scholarship to play at a big program because they're more interested in a guy who played minor league professional basketball. Sure, those guys have a gripe. But at the end of the day, you've got over 350 Division I programs. Go find somewhere else to play. There's effectively no rules for you transferring out to go somewhere else and play. Sure, you may not make the money that you could have made at a blue blood program, but frankly speaking, if these guys are coming back down to the college level to take that money away, look at it a different way. If you couldn't jump straight to the G League, they would have taken those spots in the first place. And what I see this as is a situation where, yes, money is involved now, and things are competitive when money is involved. It gets hairy. Some guys lose out. Not everybody gets a star, a participation trophy. I don't know why we continue as a general population to look at college athletics like we're 6 decades in the past. It's not amateur athleticism anymore. It hasn't been for a long time. We've gone from it being amateur athleticism to under the table payments where we pretended it was amateur athleticism to somewhat recently a situation where it's all out in the open now, and effectively the only tie that these guys have to any of the programs are the colors that they wear and the name on their jerseys. But that's been going on for a long time now. And frankly speaking, I don't see how this is any different from a guy who has decided to play overseas in a well-established, competitive foreign league and has made the jump to go play college basketball somewhere else. They say, oh, well, the leagues are different over in Europe. It's more developmental, and there isn't the opportunity to face the competition, and they haven't made the decision that these guys who have jumped straight to the G League thinking they're good enough to make the NBA have. What are you talking about? Yes, they are. They're getting paid in those leagues. Those leagues take guys who have played college basketball. In some cases, they've played professional basketball. Some of these guys have played in the NBA and gone over to the foreign leagues, and they've made a career for themselves there. These guys are playing against grown men in every other league in the world. And yet we're going to treat those leagues differently than the G League because the G League is a situation where guys took a chance on themselves? That's the only difference. This is just sour grapes. People don't like it that these guys are getting a second shot at what is effectively, at this point, the second best professional league in the United States, which is college basketball. I have no problem with it. Give them the shot. Let's let these guys play. Pay them their money. Hey, you know what? If you want to tie it back to collegiate amateurism, these guys are getting an opportunity, if they would like it, to get an education as well. So they've already been told, essentially, by the G League and guys associated with the NBA that, hey, you may not be good enough to make it in this league. So you know what? They have that information now to say, well, maybe if I go back to college, I should take the classes a little bit more seriously. Maybe this degree will serve me well because the league isn't necessarily calling my name. I think that's a win-win. So give me your thoughts on both of these topics. I think that there's definitely going to be listeners out there that have different opinions on these things. I'd really love to hear them. Let's get the comment section going on this episode. It's been a little bit light on previous episodes, but let me know your thoughts here because I just think that I seem to have a different opinion than the majority of people that I've seen talking about, especially the college basketball situation. We'll tone it down a little bit. Obviously, things have gotten maybe more heated in this episode than they have in the past. Hopefully, you guys like that. I mean, that's kind of the point. But we'll tone it down a little bit with the mailbag. This one comes from Trent. He says, "Hello, K-Bex. Longtime listener and avid fan. Thanks for taking my question." Well, thanks, Trent, for listening and for submitting the question. What has been your favorite in-person fan experience at a sporting event? Why? You can only choose one experience. Oh, that's a tough question for me because I have attended a lot of sporting events in my lifetime, but I have not attended a ton of what people would consider to be marquee sporting events. So when I say marquee sporting events, I think of things like the Super Bowl or the World Series or the national title game for collegiate basketball or football or some big event, right? That's as much a get together of who's who as it is an opportunity to watch a sporting event. I've not attended any of those. So for me, I think it really comes down to what do I remember about the game that was so impactful, and why was that impactful? So this one might come as a surprise to those who know me because I've mentioned this in past podcasts as well. I'm not a huge puck knower when it comes to the NHL and hockey in general, but I would say probably my favorite event that I've ever attended was an NHL playoff game between the Columbus Blue Jackets and the Boston Bruins back in 2019. This was, I would say, the most successful season that the Blue Jackets have had in their existence as a franchise, and they got to the second round against the Bruins, and I managed to attend Game 3 of that series, and the Blue Jackets won. It was a great game. It was a 2-1 finish where Sergei Bobrovsky stood on his head and managed to keep the Blue Jackets in the series because it was a 1-1 series going into that third game, and so people were starting to get excited, and you could tell during Game 3 that people were starting to get excited because they were competing with the Bruins, and they were going to go to Boston after these games, so it was important that they tried to get a win there. And I have never heard an arena or a stadium to the extent that they, only have, around 20,000 fans in the venue, as loud as I heard it during that event. And it was a lot of fun. I've said that about hockey before. It's one of those events where I feel like you don't need to necessarily know exactly what's going on from a strategic perspective to enjoy it. It very much was one of those situations. And, for me personally, you're talking about a hometown team, so it's kind of rooting for your city. And it was a great experience. Also got to take my brother to that one. I think he was living out of state at the time, so it was an opportunity to kind of just on a whim do something. So I think that played into it as well for me. But I would say that's probably my most memorable event. I've been to some good games. Nobody's going to remember this one. I went to a bowl game, one of the Little Caesars Bowls when I was in college. That one was a lot of fun as well. It was a back and forth game. Had good seats, took my brothers and my dad up to that game, and that was a lot of fun. I remember thinking, I'm going to do this every year, and actually tried, I think, to go back up to Detroit the next season for that bowl game as well, and didn't end up happening, and I haven't been back to a bowl game since then. So, I think it's one of those situations where you have to enjoy it while you have it, because you don't know the next time you're going to get to do something like that. But I will say, given my desire to try to go to a World Cup event next year, that my answer may change if you ask me in 12 months' time. But for now, Game 3, 2019, NHL playoffs. That is my answer. All right, well, that wraps it up for episode 9. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the show. I'm going to say it for the umpteenth time. Comment, like, subscribe on the socials. That really helps. It really gets our name out there. If you like what you see on the post about the merch, let me know. I'd love to understand where we might be able to take that. And hopefully you guys enjoy a great weekend of sports. And we'll be back with you guys next week for some more conversations. So until then, take it easy, Shuckers.